Good evening. I'm Randy Patrick. I'm with Kentucky Standard and PLG TV. And I'm here today with two special guests, Matt Bevin, the Republican candidate for governor, and his running mate, Jenean Hampton, the candidate for lieutenant governor. And welcome to our show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here. Richard Harden, your local campaign coordinator, told me that you won 44% of the vote here in this county by having a good get-out-the-vote effort here. And, of course, that was in a four-way race. Have you had that kind of win anywhere else?
We have. There have been a few other counties that were similar. I think the most we got as much as 58%, I know, in some counties in a four-way race, which is good. So we had some counties that were strong for us, and it really is a function, to Richard's point, of people on the ground, getting out the message, talking to other people, especially in low turnout races. That's what elections turn on.
Mm-hmm. So. Okay, and I was at a couple of your campaign events here in Bardstown today, and it seemed that veterans issues and convicted felons' rights were two of the issues that were discussed. What else was on people's minds here today in Bardstown?
I mean, jobs. Jobs are always on people's minds. I mean, we talked to people earlier over at the first stop, and even this morning on the radio, people are concerned about where the opportunities are going to come from economically, not only for themselves, but for their children and their grandchildren. Mm-hmm. They're worried about health care in the state. They're worried about education. So some of the very same things, not only in Nelson County, but beyond, we hear time and time again. Okay.
Since you mentioned jobs, let me mention that recently Governor Beshear came here and brought the Governor's Cup from Site Selection magazine for being the #1 state in the nation in terms of per capita income for large economic growth, large-scale economic growth. He'd mentioned that Kentucky has broken records in exports the last 3 years. It's broken records in terms of the number of jobs created as a result of economic investment. What is Kentucky doing right in terms of economic development, and what else could it do to improve that?
It's interesting. You can spin numbers any which way, and I don't mean to dismiss it, but frankly, I've driven 70,000 miles in the state of Kentucky in the last 2 years. I've been in every county, every corner of this state multiple times. The sense of optimism that he was trying to bring to bear, you feel glimpses and glimmers of it in communities like this. The Bourbon Trail has been a home run. Absolute shining success, and my hat's off to everybody that has been involved in ensuring that that has made its way to the surface. But those little gems are few and far between. There's a lot of suffering in the state of Kentucky. There really is. Economic malaise is widespread. We need more opportunity. What can be done? We need to have more conducive labor laws to attract employers to come here. We need to have right-to-work legislation passed in this state. It's critical. For those in unions, I say that, listen, in most instances in this state, union membership is declining. The places in the country where it's actually increasing are all right-to-work states. We need to have the opportunity for businesses to be here, for unions to have shops to try to unionize, and for non-union shops as well. So we need to have labor law. We need to have lower taxation. We need to get rid of, why do we have an inventory tax? Why should we have to make exceptions for bourbon barrels? Why not do it for all manufacturers? Why should we have an inheritance tax? Why do we tax production in this state? There's so many things that I think we could do a better job of in terms of attracting jobs. We need a better education system. We need a better health care system. We could talk about these things as you see fit. But.
Okay, and you mentioned that you were, within the last couple of days, that you were in eastern Kentucky all day, and of course that's one of the areas that is not doing as well as this area is. What do you see as the answer in diversifying the economy in the Appalachian region?
Again, the issues are bigger than the Appalachian region. I don't know how widespread the viewership is here, but for those of you listening, many of you might be from other communities. You may have come from different parts of the states. And what you realize, a job is a job. Honestly, Randy, a job is a job no matter where it is. Almost sounds like a Dr. Seuss book there. A job is a job no matter how small. And in all seriousness, though, when I was a kid, I grew up below the poverty level. I remember even as a kid, always grateful when my dad had a job. And he always did have a job. He always was willing to work. Sometimes he worked in a wood mill, sometimes a shoe factory, sometimes at McDonald's, sometimes he drove a truck. But he was always doing something. Jobs matter. And in Eastern Kentucky, in Western Kentucky, and everywhere in between, we need an environment that creates opportunity for jobs to be created, for people to come, and for people that are here not to leave. That's been a big issue for us in this state. A lot of employers are leaving. And there's a lot of threats, even now with Humana and Yum potentially being broken up. There's fear that some of the biggest names in this state might be leaving us. This should be concerning to all Kentuckians.
Okay. You mentioned right to work, and maybe this is a good question for Mrs. Hampton because you've got a background in manufacturing. Of course, anybody has the right to work for a non-union shop if he wants to.
Correct.
And I've read, as you say, you can spin the numbers any way you want, but I've read that states that have right to work laws typically have lower wages than other states. What is wrong, Ms. Hampton, with if a company, if the majority of employees at a workplace choose to have collective bargaining and win that right, what is, and the union has to represent all workers, not just the union members. What is wrong with asking the non-union members to pay the equivalent of union dues to pay for that representation?
Well, it's one thing to ask the member to pay. It's another thing to require it. And that's the difference between a right-to-work shop and a non-right-to-work shop. There's actually a misunderstanding because a company does not have, they are not required to cover all the employees. That's an agreement between the union and the company to do so, if they choose to do so. But the fact is, Kentucky is surrounded by by right-to-work states, and we're losing opportunity to those other states. And being a right-to-work state is a requirement. Many of the companies ask that up front. It's go or no go in many cases as to whether you're even in the running. And so who knows the opportunity that Kentucky is even losing out on. But we must pass right to work at the state level instead of duplicating the effort at the county level, so that it removes the onus of the lawsuit. You know, Hardin County has been sued, and it's not. And there's another misunderstanding. It is right to work is not anti-union. It really isn't. It is pro-worker. It protects the rights of the worker.
It's important to understand, too, you made a comment that I think is a little bit misleading with respect to the comment about how right-to-work states have lower average wages. It's because it includes states where they have always had low wages, long before they became right-to-work states. States like Mississippi, states like Georgia and Alabama and others, where there have long been low wages. It has nothing to do with the right to work. If you look at where union jobs are being created, they're not being created in Kentucky, and we're not a right-to-work state. And so if we think we're protecting union jobs, quite the opposite. The union jobs only are good if they actually exist. And increasingly, they don't exist in this state. Where are they being created? The top 5 states in the country where union membership is growing the fastest, every one of them right to work. Number 1, where union membership has increased by over 25% in the last 2 years, Tennessee, just to the south of here, sucking the jobs over the border. This is why you've now seen more than a dozen counties in this state pass right-to-work legislation at the county level. And interestingly, some of those are Democrat-controlled counties down on the border, where everyone on the fiscal court, or nearly everyone, is a Democrat. But they are doing it to survive. If there are jobs, there are shops to potentially be unionized and not. There are plenty of people here in Nelson County you've got good, solid union jobs. Outstanding. But why don't we expand the opportunity for others to have the same? Why not bring in the Volvos of the world that just chose to go to South Carolina, who were willing to let us be in the Final Four, but still ended up going somewhere else because of this issue?
Okay. Earlier, when you were at the Bardstown Farmers Market, you mentioned one of your strengths is having grown up in poverty, and I think you mentioned too, Ms. Hampton, that having humble beginnings is one of your strengths. One of the things that you've said that you will do is repeal the expansion of Medicaid. Of course, we have, as you say, Kentucky, at least in some places, is a poor state, and we've got probably upwards of a quarter of the people who are on Medicaid and would lose their insurance if that Medicaid expansion is repealed. What do you say to those people who would lose insurance either under the Medicaid expansion, or you've also mentioned that you would repeal Connect,
Yes.
the portal to the Affordable Care Act
Right.
insurance plans?
37 states don't have a state portal. So we're paying for a level of redundancy at a cost to our taxpayers that we can't afford. So I've been very clear that I will dismantle the Connect program, not removing people's ability to have access to the same thing they have at the federal exchange. In fact, I've made very clear we will use state resources during the open enrollment period in 2016, and we will move people to the federal level exchange, which is where 3/4 of the states are now accessing health care. We'll be just like them. We won't saddle our taxpayers with the redundant system that we're paying for. Starting in 2017, the subsidies roll off, and it will start to cost us in the hundreds of millions of dollars a year. We can't afford it. With respect to the expansion of Medicaid, we can't afford that either. I mean, here's the reality. It has nothing to do with whether people think it's right or fair or necessary. If I promise you something and then don't give it to you, I've lied to you. If I know when I promise it to you that I can't give it to you, that's not only lying to you, that's immoral. It's unethical. It's wrong. It's cruel. Why would we promise something to people that we know we can't deliver? 1 out of every 4 people in this state, and growing, on Medicaid, how is that sustainable? There are fewer and fewer people that are paying for that. Where's the money going to come from? We can't keep borrowing it. We are tens of billions of dollars in debt right now as a state. We cannot continue to borrow from future generations, some of whom have not even been born yet, and expect that they will still be here in this state to pay off this debt. It is the wrong thing to do. We've got to start to rely more on the individual caring for themselves and for the most vulnerable among us to be the ones that are helped. There are people who have real need. These social welfare programs exist for a purpose. They should be protected and preserved. But every time we give to people who don't need it, we rob from those who truly do.
Okay. What would your decision change if the Supreme Court were to rule this month in King versus Burwell that only state exchanges, people on the state exchanges are entitled to the subsidies?
No, because we still can't afford it. And where is that subsidy coming from? Let's be honest with ourselves. Where is the subsidy coming from? It's federal dollars. Well, federal dollars are not free dollars. Those are our own dollars coming back to us. It's as simple as that. That's important for people to understand. We're being bribed with our own money. But we're the taxpayers that are funding both of these. It would not change for the very same reasons. My reasons for feeling as I do are financial in nature. They are financially unsustainable decisions. That's why they have to be reversed, or we will collapse like a house of cards.
Okay. Another issue along those same lines in terms of debt and what we can afford, the teachers' retirement system and the state and county employees' retirement system is an issue that you've expressed some concern about.
Yes.
What is your answer to fixing that?
Yeah, I have expressed concern. It's in some measure why I got into this race. I'm the only one in this race that has any experience in the pension business. I've spent much of my adult life working in the investment management in the pension business. I started a firm here in Kentucky that today manages more than $5 billion in pension assets. I understand this well. Part of why I got in is to ensure that we actually deliver the promises that we've made. We have retirees and we have current teachers, policemen, other state workers who have been paying their dues or have paid their dues literally and figuratively and expect the promises that have been made to them to be delivered. My job as governor would be to ensure that legally and morally we do what we're required to do, which is to give them the pension that's been promised. The only way that will happen is if we freeze the existing plan for those that are already in it. For all new hirees, we have to move to a defined contribution plan. For not people that are in now, not somebody who's a year in or 10 years or 20 years in, but those that are not yet hired, if they were to come into the system, they would come into a defined contribution plan. A defined contribution plan is a 401k style plan where the individual has responsibility with complementary money from the state. The state could give matching amounts just as happens in the private sector. And then that individual has responsibility and the portability. So let's say you're 14 years into a teaching career and you realize, you know what, I don't want to double the number of years in order to be able to get my retirement and be 55. I want to go work at the newspaper, or I want to go open a restaurant. You're not trapped now. You don't have to feel like, well, but I'm this far in, I got to just stick it out. We want competition. We want free markets. And that comes from individuals being responsible for themselves and being given the freedom to take their dollars with them. We also are going to have to audit every one of these plans. We don't even know. The secretiveness that has been associated with these plans is ridiculous. There are many private sector employees that are getting pensions from the public, from the taxpayers. This has got to end. So I've made very clear some of the things that I will do on day one.
Okay. All right. And since we have Ms. Hampton with us here today, kind of a rare appearance to have the two of you together, I think, here.
Yeah, we usually divide and conquer.
What will be her responsibility in your administration if you're elected governor? I'll
let her speak to that. We've talked about this at great length, but go ahead.
Well, primarily is to assist Matt on turning the state around, but he knows that there's three areas that are close to my heart. One is entrepreneurship. Matt's an entrepreneur, and we just want to foster entrepreneurship across Kentucky, work with the colleges, work with Kentucky's Innovation Center, teach it, perhaps get it taught in K through 12, and just to increase the entrepreneurship, the entrepreneurial spirit in Kentucky. Number two is education. is close to my heart. So I've met a lot of people who are prone to either drop out or believe they can't change their career focus, and I'm here to tell you you can, no matter, regardless of your age. And so I would love to go talk to kids and just to tell the kids, stay in school, keep going. It's going to be hard, but it's well worth it. But the third thing, and this is perhaps the biggest one, is just to be an example to those who think they cannot pursue the American dream. Yeah. Just to use my story and just inspire others, and inspire others to get involved in civics.
It's interesting because the governor, the lieutenant governor position has no constitutional duties. Mm-hmm. It has largely been very titular in nature. Have any particular role other than to cut ribbons and things. We deserve better than that as a state. And we've talked about the fact, Jenean, first generation college graduate, paying her entire way through school, being the first one in her family to ever go to college, a degree in industrial engineering, an MBA from a top business school, 2 decades in the private sector, being in plant management and sales and manufacturing capabilities, 7 years former active duty Air Force officer, Gulf War veteran. I mean, what she brings to the equation is extraordinary. It would be insane if, as governor, I simply asked her to go around and cut ribbons. What a shame for the people of Kentucky. We would miss out on an incredible opportunity for her to lead on those 3 fronts and others besides, because we will need both of us working hard and rowing together to accomplish the things that need to be done to make Kentucky the greatest version of itself that it can be.
Okay. All right. Ms. Hampton, you've also been described in the press as a Tea Party activist, and Mr. Bevin, your running mate, has been described as a Tea Party favorite. I don't know if you're a member of a Tea Party or not, but what does that mean to you in terms of what your philosophy is? If you could just sort of put that in a nutshell, what...
Yeah, I mean, to me, again, a Tea Party favorite, I'm not sure what that means. It means that people vote for me who consider themselves members of a Tea Party. I've never been a member of a Tea Party or a Tea Party group. I had never been to Tea Party meetings prior to running for office and being invited to come to speak to folks. What I have learned is people who are part of the Tea Party are as often to be Democrats as they are Republicans, even more often to be independents. They tend to be people who just don't like to be put in a box. They're people who believe in limited government. They believe in individual responsibility. They believe in less taxation, and they believe in the Constitution of the United States. Well, guess what? I agree with them on all those fronts. I also want less taxation, less government, more reliance on the law of the land, and more individual responsibility. This is how I was raised. So am I in like mind with many folks? Absolutely. But you know what? People in the media so often want to put people in boxes. They want labels because it sells copy. And then you can pit this group against that group. It's nonsense. Guess what? We're both Kentuckians. We're both Americans. We're both veterans. We're both human beings. We both want the best for the future of our children and grandchildren. These are the things that matter to us. So, and again, you can speak to it from your perspective, but, activist and favorites and, those are adjectives that people can throw at anything they want.
I'm simply join millions of people around the country who are active, engaged, and informed exactly the way the founders expected our citizens to be. Our government works best when our citizens are active, engaged, and informed. And unfortunately, we don't see enough of that. We see, and you see it reflected in the low voter turnout. You see it reflected in people who are maybe they go to the polls and they're not making an informed decision. So we're trying to pay attention to what was going on in the school board, the fiscal court, the state level, the national level, and that's who Tea Party people are.
Okay. And if there's anybody who's an establishment Republican, it's Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. If he remains Majority Leader and you're Governor of Kentucky, will the two of you be happy together?
Absolutely. You've seen the video, obviously. There's nothing more happy together than the two of us. Here's what's interesting. Again, that's another adjective, establishment. What does that mean exactly? It's what people want it to mean in their own minds, and it means different things to different people. What I know about Senator McConnell is this. Among the many things that he is a pragmatist. He is a man who knows how to win in the state of Kentucky and win again and win again. He knows how to win statewide. He is a pragmatic person. He's interested in seeing Republicans in positions of influence in this state. Absolutely will work together. I've spoken to him, both before, during and since. I've talked to him since this election was decided. He will be supportive. I look forward to it. He's a little busy as Senate Majority Leader. I'm sure he'll focus on those issues. Anything that he can bring to our equation, we'd be happy to have. But we'll be happy together, even with folks like you, Randy, who may not see eye to eye with us on everything, or maybe you do. I don't know. But the beautiful thing is, that's what I love about the media, is that you never quite know where people are. But I will say this.
To play devil's advocate.
Exactly. But the reality is this. Our job is to be there for everybody. Because if I'm governor, if Jenean is lieutenant governor, it doesn't matter what somebody brings to the equation. Right, left, Republican, Democrat, independent, establishment, non-establishment. We're still going to be the governor and lieutenant governor for everybody. And everybody's in the boat. And if somebody's drilling holes in the boat at one end, that should concern all of us. And if somebody's rowing and somebody else isn't, that should concern all of us. So this is how we're going to govern.
Okay.
Happy together.
Well, thank you very much for being here. I enjoyed talking with both of you, and welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.